Hey, what's up? Welcome to an edition of the Mandatory Live Show. It's been a minute, but here we are, and that's because Inoue is going to be fighting after Labor Day weekend next Tuesday. Just a heads up, we are going to be doing a live post-fight show. It's going to be hella early in the morning, but we've done these Inoue post-fight shows before, and this one we're definitely going to need another one. But before we get into the fight preview, remember to hit that like and subscribe button because it helps the channel grow, and also follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. Bryan, it's been a little bit since we've hopped on and did a live. A little bit of a slow period in boxing, but so far during
More than
that
a
slow
little bit.
period, has anything else caught your eye before we get into this Inoue stuff?
Yeah, we should probably get into this. So on the show, we did not talk about Virgil Ortiz. We didn't get into that, and I feel like that's probably worth a mention. A lot of people thought that he may have lost that fight, which is very interesting with Virgil Ortiz. In case you missed it, this happened shortly after um Terrence Crawford's bout, and this is hand in hand because they may face each other next, may or may not. We'll see. But Virgil Ortiz beat Sergey Bohachuk, and that was a majority decision. A decision that I agreed with, by the way. It was 114, 112. He got dropped in the fight twice.
Fight of the
um,
year, fight of the year.
Fight of the year contender for sure. And ultimately, that kind of sets up an intriguing, or what will be an intriguing matchup between Virgil Ortiz and Terrence Crawford. I would favor Terrence Crawford in that
Yes.
hypothetical, but yeah, I thought it was a very, very tough competitive fight. And on the same night, Angelo Leo knocks out Luis Lopez, which whew, that was a knockout of the year contender, and one that you don't expect because you figure going into that fight, all right, Luis Lopez could win this, but he's also flawed and Leo's good, and Angelo Leo is not known for his power, and he gets a crazy, crazy knockout, like one that there was a brain bleed from Luis
Yeah.
Lopez in the aftermath of that. So hopefully he's doing well, and hopefully he, if he can't return to the ring, just don't. You can't fuck around in this sport. So what did you think? Because there were those instances, and there may or may not have been a couple other things while we were taking a small break.
I think the Virgil Ortiz fight, I think, was the most memorable one because that one for me, I believe so far is the fight of the year. Some people thought he lost. I thought he did enough to get the W, but I think he is definitely a little bit flawed, but that's what I think is fun in terms of seeing him fight.
1,000%.
That's what I like about Virgil Ortiz, and this is a guy that ended up getting dropped more than once. Right? They ended up counting that first drop. They said it wasn't a slip or whatever it was.
Mhm.
And listen, it was a really good fight. Now I'm excited for him and Bud Crawford if they're able to make it happen. And I think Bud wins probably by knockout. I'm not going to lie to you. I think
Mm.
Bud would probably pick him apart, but I think Virgil is so tough that it would be one of those fights where it's going to be entertaining. So that could also possibly be a fight of the year contender if it does get made. Hopefully it does. But we got Hustle Man in front of the show. I said this after the first fight, but I don't think it's gonna happen. They should run it back.
If you're Bohachuk, you want that. If you're Virgil Ortiz, you want to move on to bigger and better things, aka Terrence Crawford. If that fight is what becomes, what's happening next. Real quick before we get to Naoya Inoue, actually, do you want Virgil Ortiz as Terrence Crawford's next opponent, or would you prefer Terrence Crawford going another direction? Because I actually think like that's a sellable fight. I think to even casual fans because Virgil Ortiz's style, he's coming off a win where he finally looks a little mortal, so to speak. And then
Yeah.
with Terrence Crawford, speaking of like he's aging, and it's like you could kind of sell. I think Terrence Crawford will still be a pretty big favorite, like 4-1, 5-1, 6-1, or something along those lines. Maybe that's a little too much, but it's Terrence Crawford, so he'll be overpriced. But I do wonder, like, you can kind of sell, hey, Virgil Ortiz can get this upset because he's young and he's powerful. And I always say, if somebody's going to get an upset, you want them, if you're going to bet on them, you want them to have punching power. Virgil Ortiz certainly has that. So is that your preferred direction for Terrence Crawford next?
Well, I think I said after the Bud Crawford post fight show that the storylines for it would actually set it up to be a blockbuster fight because, as you know, when Virgil Ortiz was fighting at welterweight, there was always the talk that Virgil Ortiz and Jerron Boots Ennis would eventually take over that division, become the kings of the welterweight division once Bud and Spence moved on. We all know what happened there. Virgil couldn't make that weight, so he moved up. So I think the storylines are already there. And of course, Virgil Ortiz, he's such a fun fighter. He has the power. There is a chance that he could get it done against Bud Crawford. Like, it's boxing, anything can happen. We've seen things happen. Bud Crawford, to me, still, we're going to talk about either is it Naoya Inoue, Usyk, or Bud Crawford that you have pound for pound number. But Bud would definitely be the favorite, I believe, coming into that fight. But I think that's the fight to make. I think that fight would be bigger than, him and Tim Tszyu or him and Fundora. 100%. Like, if I'm taking a look at the fights at 154 pounds, those two fights aren't as big as him and Virgil Ortiz.
I really hope that Boots Ennis doesn't rematch Karen Chukadazan, because that's like the rumor, because the IBF may make it as mandatory, and it's like, why in the world would you call for a rematch for a fight that was clearly like a 12-0 fight? Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. We're gonna get to Naoya in a way, but that's another thing that sort of happened while we took a couple weeks. But that I have no, like, if that's the case, then Boots can just move up at this point. Granted, he's barely been at welterweight as a champion, because he had the interim title, which he defended once, and then he was promoted to the champion. He beat David Avanesian, which hurrah.
I'm gonna make a statement here. I think Virgil Ortiz and Terrence Bud Crawford is a bigger fight money wise than Jerron Boots Ennis and Terrence Bud Crawford, because facts are the facts in the sense that Virgil Ortiz is probably a bigger name than Jerron Boots Ennis mainstream wise. That's what I think. They're both, like, Jerron Boots Ennis is that dude.
I don't know.
But I don't know if he has a bigger name than Virgil Ortiz. If you tell a casual fan, I guarantee you, if I told a casual fan, who do you know, Virgil Ortiz or Jerron Boots Ennis, they're probably going to say Virgil Ortiz. They're not going to see Jerron Boots Ennis. I've asked people about Jerron Boots Ennis, and people are, who is that?
I don't know a lot of people that know either one.
Yeah, but who knows them more? Maybe,
honest.
Maybe I'm just talking about more.
I'm just talking about just general sports fans. Every general sports fan I know, they only watch football, or they watch football back. They all know Terrence Crawford. The vast majority of them don't know who Virgil Ortiz or Jerron Boots Ennis is. I actually think Boots and Ortiz should fight each other, and the winner should fight Terrence Crawford. I don't know what Terrence Crawford does in the time being, but we probably won't see him till next summer anyway, because Terrence Crawford has a 1 fight a year schedule at this point in his career. Hustle man says Boots and Brian Norman have been going back and forth the past few days. I think they're unifying next. That's right. Brian Norman was promoted to a title as well. I believe the WBO welterweight title.
But there were rumors about him fighting Teofimo Lopez, wasn't there?
Yeah, because if Teofimo Lopez moves up, then the WBO could just make him the mandatory, because he already has a title at 140, because boxing is boxing, and you could just, you could kind of move up and down as you please once you have a title. There's certain sanctioning bodies. I would actually like this fight. I would probably like I would definitely like this more than Boots' potential rematch that we just mentioned, because hell no. But Brian Norman is legit. I like Brian Norman.
Yeah, I think he's a tough fight for whoever fights him, to be honest with you. But let's get into the main reason of why we are doing this live. We got to get right into it. Naoya Inoue is going to be taking on TJ Doheny, and this is a fight where a lot of people are thinking it's a stay busy fight for a guy like Naoya Inoue, even saying that this could possibly be his easiest test from the last few guys that he's fought. Now, Inoue is 27-0, 24 of those wins coming by way of knockout. Keep in mind, he's 31 years old, and he's fighting an older fighter in TJ Doheny, 26-4, but he also has 20 knockouts, and TJ Doheny is 37 years old. He's coming into this fight against Inoue on a little bit of a run. He's won his last 3 fights by TKO, but also keep in mind that he is a guy that lost to Sam Goodman. He lost to Sam Goodman, and there's been talk about Inoue and Sam Goodman as well. I believe he lost by unanimous decision, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But Naoya Inoue, he's back in the ring. He stays busy. Brian, when you take a look at the odds for this fight, I mean, I'm not surprised here, but Inoue is a minus 5,000 and TJ Doheny is a plus 1,600. So my biggest question to you is this fight even worth betting on?
Minus 5,000. I mean, if you look, because this is where you would be like, all right, and we've talked about this on the show a million times. Group round betting, this is where you get value, right? Inoue is minus 1050 to win by knockout or technical knockout. Okay. So you're still not getting shit in terms of value. Now you would look at, okay, what's the next step that we talk about? Group round betting. Group round betting, rounds 1 through 6. He's minus 440 to win by knockout. You basically have to look up over unders or knockdowns to get value on this fight. If you want Inoue, if you think that Inoue is going to lose, one, God bless, and two, if you think that's the case, then yeah, okay, bet on it because you're getting a ton of value on just the money line. Look, TJ Doheny's never been stopped before. It's not going to matter because Inoue has stopped plenty of dudes who have never been stopped before, but TJ's never been stopped before. To your point, lost to Sam Goodman, unanimous decision. If I recall, that fight wasn't even close, and this was in 2013. He's had a 3-fight winning streak since. All of them in Japan, and all of them by stoppage. So credit to him. That's why setting this up makes sense, I guess, from that perspective. I would have preferred him fight a Sam Goodman, or we've talked about Ahmed Aliev potentially, but Bob Arum was basically like, who the fuck is that? Like, we're not going to do that fight. This fight makes more sense because this guy's actually fought in Japan, yada, yada, yada. Just boxing politics, it is what it is. But to me, like, is this worth betting on? I mean, I'm having a very, very, very difficult time finding value on this. I think you could do a parlay leg with that 1-6 by knockout or technical knockout group round betting scenario that Inoue stops him in the first 6 rounds at minus 440. You could tag that onto a parlay. College football's back. The NFL's coming back. You got plenty of opportunities to sort of do that. And obviously other fights like Diego Pacheco is coming up, for example, Stephen Fulton, etc. Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga a little more down the line. So you could do it that way, but there's not, like, you can't bet. I mean, unless you're putting a lot on it, which I suppose you could, if you got it like that. But why would you bet Inoue by knockout if it's minus 1050? Unless you're just going to put down like an absurd amount of money where it's not going to matter.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you broke it down perfectly. I don't think there's a reason to bet on the fight if the odds are like that. Like, they're absolutely one-sided, but there were some decent odds for knockdowns. I didn't like the number though. It was 2.5. It was 2.5, and I think it was like plus 110, which I was like, the over under was 2.5. Yeah, and it was a plus 110, and yeah, I don't know. That was for total knockdowns for 3. It's over 2.5 plus 110. Total knockdowns for 2, 1.5 is a minus 430. So even then,
and 1.5 is a good one. That's the one you want.
And it's minus 430 because it's more likely for that one to happen. But listen, TJ Doheny is extremely tough. So there's a chance when you're that tough, you're a little bit stubborn. So there's a chance you get dropped a few times and keep on coming. But I don't know if it's worth betting that way. But nonetheless, Inoue is a favorite for a reason. So let's get into the fight breakdown, Bryan. How do you think this one is going to go?
I know we have to like ask the questions, but I mean, this is a stay busy fight. This is Inoue's, with all due respect, legitimately all due respect, because we respect everyone who steps into the ring, everyone who does this for a living. As two people who like box like sparingly, like we we respect people who do that shit full time, right? I go to the gym and I've talked about this. Like, there are trainers at my gym that like box or compete professionally in kickboxing and what have you, and their lifestyle is different. All these dudes, all these men and women are to be respected. At the same time, calling it what it is, this is Inoue's easiest fight in a while. Like, he had Luis Neri in his last fight. You would take Luis Neri to beat TJ Doheny, right? You would take Luis Neri to win that fight. You would take Marlon Tapales over him. You would definitely, I know you would take Stephen Fulton over him. I would take Stephen Fulton as well. Paul Butler. Now, this is before moving up to super bantamweight, but welcome me here. Paul Butler, I mean, you could sell me on that one. Oh, Nonito Donaire, like you go down the line, like this is Inoue's lightest challenge in a while, probably since at least this 2021 period or so. Jason Maloney, you would take over this man as well. So listen, I just think Inoue's gonna he'll wipe him out. I don't know if he's gonna mess around like with Luis Neri. I feel like he was a little too relaxed coming out, and Luis Neri is also really good. Like we talked about this. It's like that's power you don't want to sleep on necessarily. I don't think he's going to make that same mistake here. And I think this will be a stay busy fight. And I will also say, because I've made this comment a bunch of times about other fights, but listen, if Inoue loses this fight, it'll be the upset of the year. It'll be the upset of the decade. It'll be the biggest upset. It'll be a bigger upset than Andy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua, quite frankly, because that's the one I usually go back to, which was the last like real big, shocking, what the fuck upset like that could rival Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. This would be as big as
Ryan
any.
Garcia and Devin Haney. If Ryan didn't take steroids, I think that was like one of the biggest upsets that I've seen. Because like when Andy Ruiz beat AJ, listen,
As a
Andy
replacement
Ruiz.
opponent too.
Yeah,
That's
he came into
important.
the fight, didn't have that full training camp.
Yes.
He didn't have that full training camp, but at the same time, like Ruiz had hands. Like he always had that speed. And I think he was just like taken really lightly in that fight. Of course, like AJ avenged it, but I still think like if Ryan didn't take the steroids, him beating Devin Haney, and people will always still remember it. Like people will always still, that's always gonna like be in the shadows for Devin Haney, unfortunately.
Let me put up some comments here because we got some interesting ones. TJ, I assume it's not Naoya Inoue's opponent. I actually do like. So I was looking at this, TJ. Thank you for the comment. Over 3.5 rounds, even money. That's the one where I was intrigued by because I'm like, all right, Doheny's never been stopped before. Maybe he makes it to the four. But then I remember like there was a time Inoue fought like Manny Rodriguez, who I
Yeah.
hold in high regard. He's skillful, he's really good, and he got him out of there in 2 rounds. There's other guys that he's got out there 1 round. Now it's been a while. Inoue, the last time he stopped somebody that early in a fight, like basically under 3.5 rounds, we'll call it for the purposes of this point. The last time he did that was in 2022 against Nonito Donaire, and that was in the rematch against Nonito Donaire, who's older, like who's just older and is old and whatever the case may be, right? So there's that. He only has 2 stoppages, basically since the Manny Rodriguez one in 2019. He only has 2 stoppages inside of 3.5 rounds. So I'd probably like that's another one with the over where I'm intrigued by, but I don't know if I have the balls to do it because I feel like Inoue could end this in a round or 2.
Yeah. Okay. So you think Inoue is going to win, but how is this fight going to go? Is what I asked you. Like, how do you see it going? Do you feel like Inoue is going to get off to a hot start? How many rounds do you see it going? Like, you didn't get into any of that. you went to the betting, but how do you see it going? Just for in terms of like a fight preview.
Yeah, I think he'll study him for a bit. He'll try to land his jab, but I think he's really going to hit him to the body. I would love to, like, if I can bet, and I've told you this, like we should be able to bet what stops an opponent, like what's the punch that does it. I would bet on a body shot. I think this is a fight where Inoue lands, where he puts a focus on hitting TJ to the body. TJ has a high guard, so obviously, like Naoya Inoue is going to look to hit him in the ribs, which he does with everybody. He got Stephen Fulton like that as well, along with many others. Manny Rodriguez, who I just mentioned, vicious body shots as well. And people are mentioning Paul Butler. I don't think Paul Butler straight up like did not want to be on the inside with Inoue. Luis Neri wanted to. He's stubborn, and he also believes
it's smart
in his
to
power.
not be on the inside with
Right.
Inoue. You
Paul
don't
Butler
want to with
really,
him, but
Paul
TJ
Butler really
Doheny,
didn't want to be on the inside.
TJ Doheny is a guy that's like gonna come forward, but as we know, Naoya Inoue is also an aggressive fighter and he's a great counterpuncher. TJ Doheny, when he throws his lead hand, he leads in with his face. You know what I mean? That is gonna get hit with an uppercut, and Naoya Inoue is going to land on you when you lean in like that. And TJ Doheny continues to do that every time he tries to throw his lead hand. So I think it's setting him up for a disaster. I think Inoue is going to show some body punching, but TJ Doheny is there to get hit. He's going to get hit, but at the same time, like, no disrespect to TJ Doheny because I love his left hook. I think he has power. He's not as fast as Inoue when it comes to speed. He doesn't have better footwork than Inoue. Inoue has more power than him. And I just think in terms of attributes, Inoue checks off every list over TJ Doheny. And TJ Doheny, I don't even believe is better than Louis Neary.
I don't. I think Inoue is gonna like he'll
This
be
is
able to
in rounds 1 through 6 for me.
he'll
It's
be
gonna
a,
happen early.
minus 440. I mean, he'll be able to get to his lead uppercuts because he likes to throw in that right uppercut against southpaws, which every
He's
orthodox
a
fighter
southpaw
probably likes to.
killer.
Yeah, like he destroys southpaws. He's going to be able to get to that. He'll get to his pull counter, probably early too with the right hand. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to look this up right now, but no, he doesn't have like a big reach advantage, but he'll figure out ways to fight from the outside because that's what he's going to do. I think it's going to be pull counters. I think he'll land those lead right uppercuts, and I think he's going to primarily hurt TJ Doheny to the body. I think that's where this fight is going to be determined more than anything else. And I think he'll feel Doheny's power probably. I mean,
Yeah.
he might do it for fun just to see what he has, and then like it's just going to be ugly. I think after like round 1, because he doesn't always start off the fastest. It depends on the fight, depends on who he's facing. Particularly the Louis Neary fight. Obviously, he did not start off fast, and then I think he'll probably kick it into gear after. I still don't think even if he starts off slow in round 1, that this is going to provide a lot of live betting opportunities also. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think he's going to break this down pretty easily. I feel bad saying that, but I mean, it's just kind of what I see.
It's not just you. I think a lot of people, the lucky number that I really like is round 3 for some reason. Like round 3 sticks out to me. Maybe I'll kind of sprinkle on that. But I do believe, like, I don't think it's
Plus
going to be a body
500.
shot. I don't think it's going to be a body shot that does it. I think it's going to be, I think TJ Doheny is going to be getting hit in the face a lot. I think Inoue is going to be landing a nasty uppercut on him because the way that he leaves his chin exposed, the way that he comes forward, the way that he leans in when he throws punches, he's a disaster. He's a disaster against Inoue. I'm just saying he set him up for failure. Like if you go back and look at all of TJ Doheny's fights, and I went back and I watched like maybe the last like 5 fights that he had, and I'm like, yo, this is like a recipe for Inoue to eat. Like Inoue is gonna eat in this fight. I mean, it's gonna be a great performance. But listen, Doheny does have a chance. I love his left hook. He does have power. He can throw flurries, but he's just not as good as the other competition that Naoya Inoue has fought. And he just isn't as good as Inoue. And it just is what it is. Now, I think the bigger question, Brian, and this is no disrespect to TJ Doheny. If you want to come on the show, we'll have you. Well, we'd love to have you and talk about this. But we're going to talk a little bit about this on the post-fight show, obviously.
Yeah,
but
so
we
we'll
could
keep it brief here.
Yeah, but what should happen when Naoya Inoue, if he is able to get it done against TJ Doheny, what should be next for him?
I mean, I guess this is where you get Akhmadaliev to be the next guy, depending on, if promotionally this is something that you're going to do. But this is the fight we were supposed to get before he lost to Marlon Zapales. Like, this is where the direction, like, it looked to be headed. Is he the best guy left over in this weight class that now Inoue has to go through? I mean, has to go through is probably strong because let's be honest, like I think he'll beat Akhmadaliev too, but I think that's a much more competitive fight than this one. To me, it's Akhmadaliev or Sam Goodman. I think those are the preferred sort of outcomes there. Sam Goodman, I believe he got injured, and that's why he was taken off the table for this spot entirely. I believe that was the case. But he is 2-0 this year. In a way, there was smoke about him potentially making this a 3-fight year and returning in December. He did fight. He did fight last December. Canelo Alvarez, by the way, was saying the same. Like, there was a report that came out that Canelo Alvarez may come back and fight in December in Japan. I don't know
Mm,
if this is a tag team sort of situation where they're going to be on the same card. That would be
that would be
ridiculous.
crazy. Yeah.
I doubt that that's going to be the case because the promotionally, like they're not, but they're not in the same house, so to speak. But yeah, I think where I would look is Akhmadaliev or Sam Goodman next.
Yeah, and if it's not those two, then I think there's conversation about him moving up to 126. And there's some really good fights at 126, but I think the fight that has to happen is the one with him and Akhmadaliev. Because
Mm.
at one point they were those two guys, a little bit of bad blood there as well. And I think that's the fight that everyone kind of would want to see. Stan Goodman, though, was talking a little bit of trash, and he was like, Inoue's fighting my leftover. Stan Goodman, stop it.
He
Stop it.
technically is fighting his leftovers.
I know,
But I
but I
get it.
mean,
I
come
get
on,
it.
like, stop it. Like, this is crazy.
Let's get to a few comments. We have, let's see, Makeshift 23 with your first contribution to the show. Thank you, Makeshift 23, for the comment, and anybody else who wants to comment because we're about to wrap this up. So get your comments in now. We'll throw some on the board. We'll have a nice conversation here. Before we come back, he's gonna have one or two more fights at 122. This is about
Yeah.
Inoue. After this TJ fight coming up, then he'll move up to 126. It seems to be heading in that direction.
The big question is the Akhmadaliev fight gonna get made? I think that's the biggest question because we don't know if it's gonna get made. There's been so much, I guess, like we thought it was gonna happen and never happened. And even for this fight, I would have rather seen Akhmadaliev over a TJ Doheny. I think Stan Goodman and Inoue happens for sure. But if Akhmadaliev doesn't happen, then I don't think Inoue is gonna wait, and then I think he goes up to 126.
or maybe you fight Sam Goodman.
No, that's what I said. That's the
Oh,
only
yeah.
fight that I
But
think
do you
will
think
be made for sure.
do you think this is the question I have? Do you think he absolutely needs to fight either one? Needs to?
No, I don't think he has to. I
I
think
don't
he can.
think.
I think he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I don't think so either. As long as he keeps winning this fight, like I don't think if he moves up to 126 and decides to try to take over 126, and let's keep in mind that he's 31 years old. He'll be 32 in April. If he decides to move up and take over 126, I don't think I'm going to look back and be like, damn, he should have fought Akhmadaliev or he should have fought Sam Goodman. I don't think they're at that level where it's like with
No,
Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence needed each other, right? Edgar Berlanga, I feel like needs Canelo. Canelo doesn't need Edgar Berlanga. Like there's certain, I mentioned that because that fight is coming up, but Dimitri Bivol and Artur Beterbiev need each other. I think. I don't think Inoue needs Goodman or Akhmadaliev. I think they need him. And sometimes that fight still gets made, as I just mentioned, with Canelo Alvarez and Edgar Berlanga.
I think a lot of people would be like, "Who is Sam Goodman?"
Akhmadaliev too. I think.
Yeah, I think Akhmadaliev is a little bit more known.
Boxing fans, boxing fans, but on a wide, like I don't even know. Listen, Bob Arum made the point. How many people in Japan heard of Akhmadaliev? I don't know the answer to that. People from
I
Japan
also
who
heard
end
a
up watching
rumor.
this,
I also
please
heard a
let us know.
rumor that Akhmadaliev wanted the Saudi money. He wanted the fight in Saudi, and they were like, "No, we're doing it in Japan." I heard that was a rumor that was floating around on X, on Twitter, or whatever you want to call it.
Twitter. Still Twitter.
Yeah. Well, technically it's not, but yes.
Spiritually.
That was kind of a rumor that was floating around that Akhmadaliev wanted the Saudi money. He wanted the fight in Saudi, and if you know Inoue, listen, what he does in Japan, like you make bread when you go out there. Stephen Fulton made bread. Louis Neary made bread when he went out to Japan. So it was something that they didn't agree on there. So it'll be interesting to see, nonetheless, if the fight does get made. I love this comment here by Hustleman. Bam's too small, maybe in 3-4 years. I think that's a fight that could potentially happen in the future. But Bam still has a little way to go. Different weight classes, obviously. But I think that would be a crazy blockbuster fight. That would be a fight that I would look forward to.
I don't think Inoue and Bam is realistic yet.
Just literally what I just said.
But I'm leading to something else, you impatient ass.
No, you don't listen. You don't listen. You ask me questions after I answer.
I'm continuing my sentence. But I think Junto Nakatani and Inoue probably
more likely, yeah,
than Bam and Inoue, at least right now. I mentioned that because somebody, Hustleman says, just imagine Inoue Nakatani May 2025. I don't think it's going to be that soon. Um, but I mean, Nakatani now has been at bantamweight for a few fights. He's about to have another title defense in October. This is going to be his third fight at bantamweight, actually, or at least on this run. So he has to move up still a good amount. And by the time he gets to, or by the time Inoue gets to 126, we're talking about Nakatani probably just getting to 122, so they may miss each other. But I think they're going to be closer than Bam is. I think Bam is, if that ever happens, Inoue is probably going to be pretty older. We have to think about this because Inoue, again, he's 31. He's going to be 32 in April. He's probably going to have one, maybe two more fights tops before turning 32. So he has to have some of these big time fights.
I think what's even more likely is Bam and Nakatani.
Oh.
I think that's a fight that's more likely than Nakatani fighting Inoue or Bam fighting Inoue. I think Bam and Nakatani, because that's a fight I think that they could probably make happen. And I think that's a banger.
We have some news. This is unrelated to this, but we mentioned Brian Norman Jr. at the top of the show. His father and trainer, Brian Norman Sr., has said that they are now very close to a deal to fight Boots Ennis for the IBF and WBO unification fight at 147 on November 9th in Philadelphia. So that even has a date. And yeah, they want this fight to happen, blah, 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 blah. Michael Benson posted this. This is reported by Brunch Boxing. So, okay. Brian Norman Jr., Boots Ennis, I can't even say tentatively agreed upon yet, but according to the report, like that's a negotiation for November 9th in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is a couple hours away. Maybe, but we'll see about that.
Hustle Man, Inoue's plan, TJ, MJ, Loma, and Tank at 30. Then he retires. He's been on a run against Southpaw. See, I think the Inoue Tank fight is such a dream. I think it's a bigger dream than Canelo Bud Crawford. Like it's like a dream fight because I don't know if Inoue goes up to 130. Because he's like, I don't know if he does that.
I don't know if Tank comes down to 130 either. Like that's the other thing. If you're talking about meeting in the middle, like I wouldn't anticipate Inoue fights Tank or Loma or anybody like that. I just don't. I have a hard time seeing it.
There's weight classes for a reason, and we've seen Inoue go up, and we've seen him dominate. And we're not even talking about 126 yet. 130 is huge. Like we saw Emmanuel Navarrete move up in a weight class too. This is a guy that had so much power, and he didn't look very powerful in his last fight.
So with Dave Benavidez when he moved to light heavyweight.
Yeah.
Because Alvarez is coming out and talking shit now. He's like, oh, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I think Inoue probably 126.
Caps out at 126.
If he ever gets to 130, I'd be a little surprised. Although not totally. I believe in his skill to do it. It's just we have to keep in mind he hasn't been at 126 yet, and he's going to be 32. So if he's going to be at 130 at any point, he's going to be in his mid 30s. I don't think Inoue is going to like hang around long past his prime. Like I don't know him, but like like. I don't get the sense like he's that kind of dude. He seems to be pretty honorable. And listen, the Saudis can't put enough money in front of him for him to take that shit. He's looking at he's looking at them dudes like, I don't need your money. You see what I do in Japan?
Let's stay on that because we got a comment from Jay, friend of the show. MJ wants him to fight outside of Japan. Brian, how do you feel about Inoue always usually staying in Japan to fight? And how would you feel about him fighting elsewhere, maybe even in Vegas or New York?
A lot of other dudes only stay in America. You know what I mean? A lot of dudes only stay in England. Like I not everyone has to leave where they're at, especially if they're making a shit ton of money and you can't beat them. If you want to beat them, I mean, if you want them to move somewhere else, beat them. I think Inoue, he's fought in America, I think twice.
Last one was Jason Maloney, wasn't it? During COVID?
He had one either right before or right after that. But yeah, it was in Las Vegas, Das Marinas. That's right.
Yes,
so it was
right.
Maloney. It was Jason Maloney in October of 2020. It was Halloween. And then Das Marinas was 8 months after that in June. And since then, he's been back in Japan. So he has fought in America a couple times. Now, I would like for him to fight in America with people because that was still like with COVID or whatever. But that's more of like a of a selfish thing for somebody who is in the States, so to speak. Like I would just love to see how he is received here. Obviously California would make a lot of sense because
LA
we
would
have
probably make more
right,
sense for him to
right,
fight for sure.
right. We have a lot of Japanese people specifically on the West Coast in the Bay Area and in LA where like that would be a lot of fun if you put him in. I forget what the name of it is now, the Dignity Health Complex or whatever it is. It used to be the StubHub Center. I still want to call it the StubHub Center. If you put them somewhere like that, or maybe even the Staples Center or something along those lines.
Crypto. Yeah, I think he could sell out crypto.
I said Staples Center. It's still the Staples Center to me.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about these new arena names. It's all sponsorship shit. I like. I'm not like no. I'm not calling it the crypto fucking .com arena. I'm not doing that shit. But yeah, like I don't think he needs America. I don't. Like he's clearly like doing what he's doing in Japan, and his people are out there. I don't think he's a coward by staying over in Japan. I think a lot of people who say that are fucking stupid. Like
Yeah.
I don't, not the commenter, but there are a
Speaking
lot of people. There are people in boxing who are like, "Yo, he should leave Japan if whatever." And it's like you have dudes that don't leave anywhere. You know what I mean?
It's so funny talking about stupid. I had somebody hit me up on IG and was like, and I'm not gonna say his name, but he pretty much said, I would like to see Inoue fight some real competition in the US. And I'm reading this off my phone. And I said he has fought real competition. He fought Fulton, he fought Lewis Neary, he fought a Nonito Donaire, which by the way, like at the time, like we gotta remember, like Donaire was that dude in the division for a very, very long time.
Mhm.
This guy said Fulton was the only person that he fought, and then responds that Donaire is 41. And if you think 32 in boxing is young, it's not old, but it's not young. I just don't think that he's that good. Not pound for pound number one.
Is
That's a
Stephen Fulton
terrible.
is Fulton the best guy he's fought?
I Fulton's one of them, but look what he did to Fulton. He
Right.
annihilated him. I mean, like I was sitting here in this seat stunned at what I was seeing in that Inoue Fulton fight because I was riding hard for Fulton. But
Mm.
listen, Inoue, that's one of the toughest fight. I think Lewis Neary was a very tough fight for him. He got dropped and was able to get it done. And listen, it was a great
If
fight.
Stephen Fulton fights Lewis Neary, I think you're gonna take Stephen Fulton in that fight. But how confidently are you doing that?
We haven't seen Cool Boy fight in a minute.
He's
Like
about
there's
to. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I know, but
let's see
the
let's see
long
where he's
layoff
at.
is
Yeah.
the long layoff is a worry for me because it's been a long time. So I definitely would like to see how he looks in this next fight, which he's about to fight.
Yeah. Fighting Carlos Castro too, who
It's a tough fight.
Lewis Neary coincidentally beat him, as
Yeah.
did Brandon Figueroa. So look, that's not an easy fight. First time in 14 months. So
Inoue mentioned a long time ago his goal is fighting at the MGM Hotel for a pay-per-view fight. Depending on what like a pay-per-view fight would a pay-per-view fight be him and Nakatani?
yes,
Yeah.
1000%. I
Down
wonder
the
what
line, down the line.
I wonder what that would do here. But here's the thing: him
I
and
feel like
Nakatani,
I think it would be bigger in Japan.
it would. That's the thing. Him and Nakatani have to fight in the Tokyo Dome. Like
Yeah,
have
like
to.
that
What's
wouldn't
gonna
make any
happen?
sense for that to happen in the States.
I'll
There's
tell
no
you
way
what.
that makes sense.
The only dude of everyone we're talking about, the only dude where I'm like, okay,
Bam?
yeah, that's probably the only dude where I'm like, okay, that could be in America. That's a sellable. We don't know if it's gonna happen. We're just like sort of fantasy booking this, right? If he's gonna fight Bam Rodriguez, and you told me, oh, this actually has a shot to be on the West Coast, like, yeah, I'm sold. That will make a lot of sense.
You know
I
where
don't think
you
it needs to happen in LA or San Francisco or Phoenix,
yeah.
but that's a sellable fight in California for sure.
Well, to be quite honest with you, I think you could do it in LA. I think you could do it in the Bay. I think you could do it in Phoenix, but I also think because Bam is from Texas that you could do it at Cowboy Stadium. Because if we're thinking about how Bam's gonna grow from now until if he ever does fight a guy like Inoue would be a little bit older. Bam would still be coming up. Like I think they could do it at Cowboy Stadium. I think it could be that big. That fight would be that big, in my opinion.
Do we have anybody from Texas watching this? Is there a lot of Japanese people in Texas? I don't feel like I don't know.
I think think just as like if you're a fan of boxing, you'd want to see that. But I think
For sure.
Bam's going to be that big where he is going to have fights at Cowboy Stadium like Spence did.
But I
Like
think
he's going to
I
be
just
that
think
big.
if you're in a way, it probably makes more sense if it's in Cali, if you're gonna do it in America.
Or
If
in
it's on the West
Vegas,
Coast,
or
you're
it's
gonna
in
do it in
Vegas because
America.
Vegas still
Or
kind of
Vegas.
counts as, West Coast a little bit. But
No, it is. It is. It's completely on the West Coast. Selfishly, I would love for Naoya Inoue to fight at the Garden.
probably won't happen.
Probably
uh,
won't happen because nobody we're talking about is like, oh, like I could see them fighting at the Garden necessarily. You know,
maybe him and Tank. I don't know. These are all dream fights,
no,
right?
I was gonna say like you could actually like you can get away with Inoue and Sam Goodman in the Garden. We got Australians here. We got
That's not that's not a fun. Well, I would. You know what? If Inoue was to fight in the States and fight Sam Goodman, that's great. But I think Sam Goodman would make more bread fighting in Japan,
yeah. No, I agree.
right? He'd make
I
more bread.
agree.
He'd
I
get the
would
bag there.
and I would love selfishly. He doesn't need to fight at Madison Square Garden, but there was a time where every major star in the sport
Legacy.
had at least a fight at Madison Square Garden. Now we've sort of gotten away from that, and a lot of the big fights lately have been in Vegas and Saudi Arabia and Japan, as we're talking about. So it's not necessarily the case anymore. But selfishly, yes, I would love if Inoue fought at the Garden. I think that would be a massive, massive event. You just got to get him, like, you got to get him an opponent that's worth it, is what I would say.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that, and of course, we love building these dream fights. Not for sure that any of them are going to happen, but nonetheless, we like to talk about it. We are going to be having a post-fight show after Inoue and Doheny. Remember to rock with us on that Tuesday early morning. Now, that fight might end a little bit earlier than usual, so we're not quite sure what time it's going to be, but it's going to be early. It's going to be early. It might be like 3 in the morning here on the West Coast, 6 in the morning
Oh,
there, or
God.
4 a.m. here on the West Coast, and 7 a.m. there where Bryan is in New York. But we will be rocking out with you. So if you are going to be catching Inoue, if you're waking up early to watch him, we'll be hanging out with you after the fight for the post-fight show. So keep that in mind. Also follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. And if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, please do, because it helps the channel grow. Bryan, any final thoughts before we get up and out of here? I'll let you have the final words.
The day after Labor Day, too, this guy is gonna fight early ass in the morning on Tuesday. That fight card, by the way, this is the last thing I'll say, starts at 2:30 a.m., but it's 5 fights. So probably would be main event time around 7 a.m. Eastern time. Because all the fights are 12-round bouts except for one. There's a 10-rounder there. Ismael Barroso, who we've talked about on the show a few different times, he's going to be fighting Andy Hiraoka. And that's going to be, I think that's a title defense, but BoxRec doesn't recognize the WBA anymore. So, I can't necessarily tell, but, you could look up why that is, because boxing is just a fucking mess. But I kind of get why BoxRec did it. But anyway, so that we're expecting the live to be somewhere between 7-8 a.m. Eastern, 5 a.m. Pacific.
Hopefully, we'll see about that though. We'll
Hopefully
definitely
later,
see it.
honestly.
I think it's
But
going to be earlier, man, because I think I forget what fight it was. I remember, but I think you had just woken up on time. I think it was the Christmas fight when I think it was Marlon Tapales. It was, and that fight started earlier than usual, and we did it right after Christmas. And I remember like Bryan wasn't even up yet, and it was like 3:30, and I was like, "Yo, wake up!" And I texted you like he's walking in right now, and you had just
I woke up
woken
during
up.
the entrance.
Yeah,
I was brushing my teeth during the introductions.
but I remember like we initially thought that walk-in would be around like 4 a.m. on the West Coast, 7 a.m. on the East Coast. And it just wasn't like that. Like it started way earlier. So I think it could be one of those situations where we're going to be up a little bit earlier than usual, because I don't see this fight going that long either.
No.
And so I think it could even be like 3:30 a.m. on the West Coast and like 6:30 on the East Coast. But we'll be here with you. So make sure to join us after Inoue fights. Yeah, and it'll be after Labor Day. So enjoy the Labor Day weekend, guys.
Yes.
I
have one more barbecue before the fall gets here.
As soon as September hits here in Vancouver, it gets you see the change.
Yeah.
The leaves are already falling out here. So
yeah, here too, actually.
Yeah, it's weird. Enjoy the last couple of it's not officially like summer's not officially over, but I feel like once Labor Day's over, then it's like full fall, Halloween, all that holiday stuff mode.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enjoy the Labor Day weekend. We'll see you during the post fight show. Thanks for rocking with us early this morning. We appreciate you, and we'll see you in a couple of days.